Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Utah Board of Water Resources briefing meeting. My name is Kyle Stevens, and I'm the chairman of the board this year. We welcome those that are in attendance and excuse director of the division, Candace, but she's participating with us virtually. So we appreciate everyone being here. For the briefing meeting this morning, I'll just mention the board members that are present. Then when we have our board meeting later today, we'll let them introduce themselves individually. But Randy Crozier, Jim Lemon, Wayne Anderson, Norm Johnson, Blaine Ibsen, Charles Holmgren, and myself, Kyle Stevens, are all present. Juliet Tennant is asked to be excused today and will not be with us. And so we'll go ahead and let Shalane fill in for Candace and introduce those that are participating with us from staff for the briefing meeting, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, thank you, Candace, for joining us, even though virtually, our director. We've got Shannon Clow is here. Todd Stoneley, Assistant Director of Planning, myself, Assistant Director of Development, Marisa, Project Funding Manager, Tom Cox, Ben Marett, and Jaqueline Pacheco, all from the project funding section, are here with us as well.
And do we have anyone else that is participating virtually?
We do have Carmen and Paul, I believe, in the back room helping out with AV. We appreciate them.
We certainly appreciate all that they do in helping putting these meetings together. And Shannon, you asked me earlier if I was going to use this gavel, and I forgot again. So we'll bang it now, and just so that we're maybe somewhat official. Even though today's agenda is somewhat short, it is packed with a lot of information and detail. And probably one of our bigger discussions will be the discussion on secondary meter grant applications and the updates for that. We look forward to that. But right now, we'll just go through the agenda items, and I'll first ask if there are any questions or comments relating to the minutes of either the briefing meeting or the board meeting from the last time we met in May.
Mr. Chairman, I just noticed in the briefing meeting, my last name was misspelled. I know Swedish names are hard to spell, but left an M out. Too many consonants together. But that's the only item I noticed.
Oh, down, not under the board members present, but down in the minutes
Yes, sir.
of one of the action items. Okay, well, we'll make note of that. Are there any others? Okay, if not, then we'll act on those later in the board meeting for approval. The next discussion item is the Bear River Commissioner, appointment of a new Upper Bear River Commissioner and alternate commissioner. So Candace, are you taking that discussion item to lead us off?
Yeah,
Okay.
happy to. So before you, or they will be before you, I believe they're going to attend virtually. Norm Weston, who was the previous alternate commissioner for the Upper Bear River division. Sorry, let me start back. So at the last Bear River Commission meeting, Blair Francis resigned from the commission after a lot of years. How many was it, Charles? Was it 30 or 40 years
42.
on the commission? 42 years on the commission, an incredible amount of time.
Virtually forever.
Yeah, and the Bear River Commission was able to pass a resolution thanking him for his number of years of service and great benefit that he was for the commission. And so to replace him, we have recommended Norman Weston be the commissioner for the upper division, and then Bart Argyle as the alternate.
What is Bart's history?
I personally, I don't know Bart's background. I've never met the gentleman, but I trust Blair Francis and Norm Weston to find a very qualified individual for being the alternate commissioner up there.
And that is exactly what we did, is we reached out to Blair and Norm for recommendations in their area. So that was their recommendation.
Do you have any other information regarding his background?
You know, I don't. I can try to get some more. Let me see what I can find for you.
That might be helpful just to have additional information on what the background.
Is he
what
gonna, is he gonna be attending virtually too?
I believe Norm and him will be attending virtually.
Okay, so we'll have an opportunity to ask him questions at that time if we need to. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, and I believe he submitted his resume to Todd Adams at the department. So let me see if I can track down that.
Okay. And so with that, that will require some board action by way of a motion. And I think, Charles, you're prepared to be able to, or you're prepared to present that motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've been given a document for reading in a motion, and I support the appointment besides that as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions then relative to that particular issue or item? Okay. Well, we'll move to the next item, and that is a drought update. Laura Haskell will be doing that. And that will just be in the board meeting, not here in the briefing meeting, correct? Okay. Well, we'll look forward to whatever information she may have and will be bringing to us. Okay, next items on the agenda then, we'll review projects. And the first one to discuss is RE 458, City of South Salt Lake. Jaqueline, if you have some information to share with us on that, just note that that is in Juliet's area, and she is not with us today. So when we get ready to make a motion on that, we will need someone from the board. Blaine, if you'll plan to do that. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jaqueline.
Okay, so with this project, the City of South Salt Lake has two projects. The primary one is to develop a new well pump station and iron and manganese treatment plant. And they don't want to exceed $8.5 million in board funding. And whatever is left over from that primary project, they want to use those remaining funds to apply it to a secondary project, which is to replace some of their cast iron main lines. If you look at the cost estimate, there's two. One that'll give you just the primary project, and the second one will include both projects. So the $10 million of total funds for this that they're requesting that I presented in this report will cover about 77% of both of the projects. And with that, the recommendation that I made in the report is for a repayment of 30 years and 1% interest. They still exceed their affordability by $2.26. Are there any questions on the report?
Any questions of Jaqueline on the report? I have one, and that is looking at, you indicated they're wanting to keep their total at 8.5 million, yet their costs are going to be more than that. Where are they proposing to come up with the difference?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to explain that. So they plan on replacing those over the remainder of the lines over time. So the amount that's remaining, they're just going to use that to cover as much as they can to replace some of the lines, and then the rest, they plan on replacing those over time, and they would finance them.
So they'll just be phased in and self-financed?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Jaqueline on that particular project? If not, thank you. So we'll go to the next one, and that's the committal of funds, the Provo River Water Users Association, RE 446, and Tom Cox, project manager, and Wayne, this is in your area. So anything you want to add or say at this point?
I think we purposely had the representatives from Provo River Water Users come in last month and discuss with us their project in a little more detail. We did that on purpose so that, we had a month's worth of opportunity to think about it, or at least understand the project, rather than them just coming in today and asking for $65 million. So it's a tremendous project, something that needs to be done, and I'm all for it. In working with these guys, they are a very responsible group of men, and I feel really good about this project.
One of the things that I remember from the project was the fact that it's all going to be done with a full reservoir, or
Yeah.
as full as the reservoir is.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be underwater, and those underwater divers and workers, I applaud their tenacity and courage.
Well, the other thing, especially in the condition we find ourselves in right now with the drought, it would be disastrous if we had to drain that reservoir to do that work. So it's amazing just the thought of them being able to do that.
Tom, go ahead and explain whatever else we need to know about it.
Yeah, the project itself hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed between now and a month ago is that the association, after looking at their budget and cash flow, made a request to us to see if they could adjust the repayment a little bit. They'll still be asking for the $65 million to be paid back 1% interest over 35 years. But instead of a set amount for the first 5 payments, like the board authorized last month, they're asking for increased payments. They'll start at 1.1 million and basically increase 100,000 each year for the first 5 years. And then the remaining 30 years will be a set amount. So it's just kind of easing into the payments while they're paying off some other things and working with their budget. So we thought that that's a reasonable request. So that's what's recommended in the report.
Okay. Wayne, any comments on, or comments on in support of that approach and request?
Yeah, it's very reasonable. It's not a huge change, but it is something that'll allow them to kind of ease into it and work into it.
Okay.
Go
Go ahead.
Norman, I assume the interest will accumulate.
Yes.
Right. They'll just pay interest on whatever hasn't been paid back. So because they paid a little bit lower in the first 5 years, the the remaining 30 years, that payment will be a little bit higher, and they'll
Yeah.
be paying interest on whatever balance is there.
Okay. All right, and Wayne, you're prepared to make the motion on that one? And because they did come in last time, there's not a requirement or necessity for them to be present today. Is that right?
No, they are planning on being here,
Oh,
and
okay.
because they are asking for a change, we would require that.
Oh,
If
okay.
they would have kept the terms the same, we wouldn't have required it, but they're planning on being here.
Are they planning to bring the same contingent they did last time, or?
It'll be just Keith Denos, their manager, and Jeff Budge,
Okay,
and then they may have one of their engineers virtually in case that you have some questions about the
Questions.
project itself. So.
okay. All right, any other questions then on that project? If not, we'll move to the next ones or special items. The first one is RE 455 Uintah Water Conservancy District. This is for authorization and committal of funds. Ben Marett is the project manager, and Randy, this is in your area. Anything you want to say to start with, or?
Well, let Ben kind of explain things, and I visited with Shalene this morning. Also, I think she's got some information put together. They would like to request repayment and whatnot, different than what was in the board packet. And so I think that's probably, once we understand, we'll have some discussion and go from there.
Okay. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, that's correct. So the Uintah Water Conservancy District has a canal called the Steineker Service Canal. It's about a 12-mile long canal. It runs the length of Ashley Valley from the north to the south. It starts at Steineker Reservoir and serves approximately 15,000 acres of ground agriculturally. They're water wholesalers, so they sell water to irrigation companies. They don't themselves have any actual end users. Their canal at this point is mostly open earthen canal. They started a project back in 2016 to begin piping the canal with HDPE pipe. They completed 3.3 miles of the canal at a cost of approximately $10 million. That was completed in 2017. Their intention is to complete the whole project, and so they are coming to the board today. They've procured some grant funds that they'd like to put towards piping additional sections. They're going to be doing about 15,000 feet. It's 2.84 miles of 72-inch HDPE pipe. Once they get the whole canal piped, they expect to save about 4,000 acre feet of water a year from evaporation and percolation into the groundwater. However, this section will save about 1,000 acre feet of water a year. The total project cost of this section is expected to be about $27 million. They do have bids on the project that have come in. And that is about the extent of the project. Are there any questions?
Under the proposed project heading there, it talks about the fact that, it covers, you've covered the description of the project. My question there is, the applicant will begin purchasing pipe as soon as funds are available. What type of a time frame do we anticipate that being?
So we're looking at a bond closing, hopefully the end of this month, approximately. Yeah, and as soon as they have money, they're gonna put in an order for pipe.
And then do they anticipate any supply chain issues relative to?
That actually has been a major concern. We're all aware of the current, market situation, all the things going on. The pipe manufacturers actually are in a pretty good place. The last I heard, where they're looking for work. The particular pipe manufacturer that they're pursuing, and so they're expected to have pipe in actually fairly quickly.
I know that's kind of a loaded question. It's hard to anticipate that, but I just wondered if they had already run into that ahead of time and was anticipating that.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. Any other questions?
So they're the applicant is planning to request special terms, as Randy mentioned, and Shalene's been furiously pounding away trying to get some payment schedules figured out. And we wanted to discuss with the board what would be palatable repayment terms, both for the board and for the applicant. They would like to keep their payments at approximately $500,000 a year. They're planning on asking for a few concessions, namely a 40-year repayment term. They're also going to request a 90-10 cost share. What we have currently in the report is an 85-15. And they're also going to ask for an altered payment schedule, where for the first 15 years they have a lower amount, and then for the remaining 25 they would have a higher repayment. So Shalene has all the information, a lot of information on that.
A lot. So let me give you just some basics. When we talk about the cost share split, the 85-15 versus 90-10, we're talking about the non-BOR portion of the project. And so when we consider that, staff is recommending the 85%. That's actually 74.8% of the project cost at the $20,237,000 that's in your report. If you bump the non-BOR portion up to 90, you're looking at $21,428,000, which is 79.2% of the project, the non-BOR portion of the project. So we did run a whole bunch of scenarios, 35 years, 40 years, and I did in particular, part of the reason they requested the $515,000 cap for the first 15 years is their existing payments that they're making. I believe it is on a board project. So they wanted lower payments up front and then would be willing to bump up those payments after they've paid off their existing debt. So I ran those numbers for you. At the 85% or $20,237,000, if we capped the first 15 years payments at $515,000 or approximately $515,000, the remaining at 35 years, the remaining payments would be $896,000. If you provided a 40-year repayment term on the 85% cost share, we'd be looking at 25 years payments of $726,000. If we look at providing 90%, the $21,428,000, a 40-year repayment term, $515,000 for the first 15 years, leaves 25 years of $792,000. And I didn't run 35. Sorry, that's one I didn't do. So, but that gives you a range. We are happy to put on paper a motion for you after you've had a chance to discuss what you think you'd be willing to consider. If the 90% is something you'd be willing to do, longer repayment terms. Personally, I think staff is okay with lower repayment term, a lower cost repayment in the beginning to help them be able to make both payments. But it does make a larger payment down the road. But we're open to.
What is that current payment on the existing debt? Do you know?
I didn't look that up. Do you?
I believe it's approximately $500,000 a year.
I think
So with
it's-
them both together, they'd be paying about $1 million.
Roughly.
Yeah.
And that project is expected to be paid off in 2036, so about 15 years. When they're that's why they're requesting a lower 15-year payment in the beginning.
What's our precedence on 40 years versus the other timeframes?
And the board hasn't done it often, but they have done it. In fact, I will say we have one of our staff engineers was going to attend the inspection of a dam and said, do we still need to worry about this? Does the board still own it for paying for the dam construction? And I looked it up and I said, yeah, until 2050. And obviously it hasn't been a recent construction. So, yeah, they've been back to the board several times to ask for extended repayment term because the growth didn't happen as was expected when the board originally paid for the dam. And so, while it's not common for worthwhile, costly projects, it does happen occasionally. It's just, as I mentioned to Randy earlier today, it's really what the board feels like. This is why we're fond of saying they're guidelines. You're the board. You can make your decisions, and it's not up to one person to decide. The board makes a decision.
It seems like to me that with a 4,000 acre foot savings in water, that's pretty significant. And
Didn't you say this is just one?
well, this particular portion is just one, but the whole project is 4,000.
That's correct. And once this section of the project is piped, that will constitute about 2/3 of the canal. There will still be approximately a remaining third of the canal that will be piped. And the limiting factor on deciding when that section can be piped is basically availability of funds.
Mr. Chairman, I don't remember with any specificity, but, or
That's right.
specificity. That's a hard word. But and I'm okay with this, but I just want to remind the board that I think we've had other applicants ask for another 5 or 10 years on loans and we've denied them. And I think, I don't know if it was DMAD or Yuba Reservoir where they wanted to go out 30 and we said, oh no, you can only go 25. And I think we did it to one of the Cache County applicants too. So, every application's specific to the individual's problem, but I would just remind you that some days we're pretty heavy-handed and other days we're pretty liberal. So I just make that comment.
I'm just curious. Randy's been really good on this board from my perspective of questioning when people want exceptions and things like that, and here we've got one with, they're asking for us to change the 85-15 to 90-10. They're asking us to change 30 to 40. They're asking for all their payments and all that. Randy, this is your area with the perspective and the background you've had on previous projects. Where are you at on this one?
Well, and I'll be honest, I've struggled with what the request is, but I did ask Ben, and I appreciate Ben the information. He went back and pulled up for me. I said, so how many projects have we funded over a 30-year or whatnot? A 30-year term is what I asked. And I was surprised when he sent it to me. I think there's almost 40 projects listed. They go from 64 years down to 31, which I personally was not aware that we had funded at that extent and I'm sure, Ben, you could probably share this with the others. That spreadsheet might be helpful. So it isn't uncommon, and I also looked to see were they spread all over the state or whatnot? And it is pretty well spread all over the state, which maybe the rest of you are aware of this, but I wasn't aware there was that many of them for that long a term that were out there. So that did somewhat surprise me because I wanted to know what the precedence was, what we had done as a board in the past, because my memory's real good for about 30 seconds and then it's gone. That's on a good day. And then I did talk with Jaqueline and with Ben both again this morning about the 90-10, and that is something that has been done at numerous times. And that's why I asked Jaqueline to run numbers, because I'll be honest, our financial situation probably isn't as good as it was several years ago as we look at the requests that are coming in. And so, I realize this is in my area and I understand the concerns there. And one of the questions that I did ask them yesterday as we visited with them a minute, I said, in the contract that you just led and got numbers back, I said, do you have a fuel clause in it? Because I assume you're going to be negotiating fuel. When we built Sandwash Reservoir, I was on the Central Utah board at the time. And anyway, W.W. Clyde was the contractor on that particular project. And we had put a fuel clause in there, and we ended up, I don't remember for sure, but I think it was between $1.5 and $2 million difference in fuel that we ended up paying for, which, if I was a contractor, I wouldn't touch anything right now without a fuel clause in that contract. So I think they have some unknowns there, and all of us are aware that anytime you're going through communities with population and subdivisions, it's a lot more expensive than if we're out doing it in the farm ground. And so a lot of this goes through that type. And so then you ask yourself, okay, the safety factor comes into play here as well. The safety of enclosing these canals rather than being open through populated areas. So I don't know. I'll be honest. I struggled a little. The more I think about it, I guess I feel a little more comfortable with what they've asked for, knowing some of these unknowns that are out there, as well as the safety factors. The water savings, is definitely a critical piece. The last end of the canal, as all of us know, is always smaller pipe, and pipe's cheaper than your first and your middle stretches are always more expensive because of the volume of water that you're packing through those reaches. Is it a good project? Absolutely. I believe it's a good project. It's just, what are we as a board comfortable with, I guess, is settling on how we're willing to fund it. Yes. Does that help answer your question at all, Blaine, or not?
Yeah, I think so.
It's, it's a tough one, and Ben's assured me that what's being asked for is not out of line for a project of this size, and the district said, well, we decided we were going to move forward with it, even though we're in these uncertain times. Would it be cheaper in the future or more in the future? Who knows? But you have to make a decision and move forward, whether it's right or wrong. Not making a decision is wrong too. So who knows what the future holds? And I believe the project that they're still paying off is what they call a Green River Pumping Project, which is utilizing part of the water rights that, excuse me, part of the water rights that was delegated to the Conservancy District from Water Resources. And they worked extremely hard to find a way to preserve and to put some of that water to use, which, they've been very proactive in those things and taking water. They pump it into the Pleasant Valley and Ouray area, and then they, through exchange it back up through the system, which is a very progressive way to use that water off from the Green River, which is helping utilize Utah's share of the Colorado River, which that right was all part of the ultimate phase of the Central Utah project, which was supposed to all come into that area, which is what's providing the water for the St. George pipeline now. That's the same rights that's being used or proposed to be used for the Lake Powell pipeline. So it's not like they haven't been progressive in trying to make things work in that area as well in the basin. So.
Okay, Randy, thank you for that feedback. Given that discussion and the information that Shalane and Ben have presented and the different scenarios, I guess my question at this point is, so that we can have a little firmer direction as to what we want to do when we get in the board meeting, is there a preference right now as to what the board would, the type of action the board would want to take?
I'm personally comfortable with going along with their request, the 90-10 and their payments.
And the 40-year,
Yeah.
90-10, 40-year, reduced payments for the first 15, escalated payments for the remaining 25. And the same 1% interest rate. Okay, you've heard Wayne's recommendation. Are there any other?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. I think that it's a fairly expensive project and we want it to be successful. One of the things we've considered in the past is making sure we don't have the terms so they can't pay them back, they fail. We'd rather not have to come back and take it or come back and redo. So I don't see a problem with it.
That's one of the things that Randy's predecessor, Galen, kind of beat into my head, was that just what Jim just mentioned, that we do want things to be successful. I guess the way it's been explained to me, I'm more comfortable with it. That 40-year is the one that actually personally gives me the most heartburn. I'd feel better on a 30 or a 35.
Well, and
But-
if I can add, now I've been running the one calculation I didn't have before, and I've figured it out. If you provided 35 years for the 90-10 split with the lower initial payments, you're looking at 1%, 15 years of $515,000 payments, and the remaining 20 years, let me make sure I've got that right. Yes, the remaining 20 years would be $977,000. So it'd be that close to $1 million that would be what they'd be paying for the two projects up front. So you'd be closer to that. So if you only add 5 years to the 30-year repayment term, it still seems reasonable to me, rather than extend it out to the 40. 35 years gives them 20 payments of $977,000.
Do we have in here, it's probably there, I probably missed it, Ben, but that HDPE pipe, that'll last what? That exceeds the 40 years well, doesn't
It often the expected life on a pipeline is 50 or so years, but it is not at all uncommon to see them last for a very long time.
It's probably your most durable material that's out there, your HDPE. And I'll be honest, I've asked a lot of questions and I was on the phone with Ben the last couple of days because I was struggling up front, I'll be honest, but as I've dug into it a little deeper and understand a little more of the intricacies and think about the projects that they've tried to move forward. I'm comfortable with the terms, but I felt like it was very important that we as a board have a good open discussion on this.
Well, maybe then the terms at 90-10 and 35 years is kind of a middle ground or compromise between the two that could be managed by them.
You know, I don't know their total financial obligation, but we're talking about $100,000 a difference year. What are we looking at from the 35 year to the 40? If I got the number right, it was 326,000, and then this new one would be 900. And how much, Shalene?
Okay, actually, so at a 40-year repayment term on the 90, are you talking about the 90-10 split?
On the
Okay.
90-10.
On the
split.
90-10 split, 40 years with 515,000 for the first 15 years.
Okay.
Then the remaining 25 years is 792,000. And at
Okay.
35 years, the final 20 years are 977,000.
So the difference in those two payments is basically,
Almost $200,000.
yeah.
Just making sure you realize all the data. So at 15 years, is that other $500,000 payment going to be done? Okay. And so the financial feasibility on that's in the report. Well, there's this debt service analysis thing. Says that a third-party debt service analysis did say that they can afford a debt service of approximately $1 million. So just making sure all that information's there for the board.
You know, and if that's where the board's comfortable, I mean, if that's where we, need to go, is that 35 years? Maybe that's what we propose back.
I think it's worth consideration. What Marissa mentioned is this debt service capacity analysis that was done where they have approximately $1 million annually to outside of their existing debts. While they do have $1 million available, it would be unwise to extend, up to that limit. Simply because they use some of those funds for their operation expenses for repairs, unexpected repairs, and that sort of thing. That's all.
So again, given the discussion that we've had, so that we don't get into a large debate, during the board meeting, is there a consensus that we can kind of lean towards relative to a motion or recommendation based on this discussion and the information that they then may present in the board meeting themselves?
Maybe if I might ask Shalene, I apologize, but what would it do if we split the difference and went to a 37.5-year repayment? I'm just curious.
You can't have a half a year. Sorry.
Well, go 38 and see what 38 or 37
I'll
does.
play with those numbers. Give me a minute.
I know if you're saying $1 million is all the debt service that they have available, if you go to 977,000, that doesn't give you much wiggle room for the next 40 years. Of course, there's probably going to be some tax increases, but I mean, that makes things is pretty tight if you go to that 977,000 annual payment.
Once their existing project is paid off in 2036, that'll free up $400,000 to $500,000 of additional funds they'll be able to service their debt with.
So So maybe that's workable. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, which is why they had they were requesting the altered repayment
So with the
schedule.
500,000 that they're presently paying on the Green River plant is saying that they have $1 million capability. of
They would
doing
like to
that.
put that money towards this project in the future, towards repayment of this bond.
So when those payments step up, you're moving just about that amount of debt service to
Mhm.
this project,
Yeah,
which would still leave them close to the $1 million of available debt load service.
well, technically they would have increased debt load service at that point because they would have less debt.
But they would be transferring. it
I'm
back
sorry,
to this
greater debt.
project.
I'm sorry, what?
They would basically be moving that piece from what they were paying there to this one, which would leave their debt service basically similar other than the additional piece
Correct,
over and above the 5.
correct.
Is that right?
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for Shalane to come up with the alternate numbers.
I'm going to need some time.
Okay.
Let me just say this. I am fine with you all thinking about it, hashing it out in your minds over lunch. I will come up with all the scenarios and put them all on paper so that you will have them in front of you at the board meeting, so that when a motion's made, you can either agree with that motion or make a substitute or whatever you choose to do. I will have all of them for you, but I'm assuming you're all okay with the lower initial payments of 515,000. So I'll work them all with that. And with a 90-10 split, it seemed to be consensus that you were all okay with that. So those are the parameters I'll work within and come up with the various scenarios.
On the
Is that
year,
okay with you?
on the number of years repayment.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
That will be helpful. Okay, thank you, Ben. And thank you, board members, for that hearty discussion. And I just wanted to make sure that when Shalane made mention of the fact that she'll come up with some information for us for a motion, that it's not an emotion situation. So, okay, let's go to,
Well, and let me ask one more. But if you can, Shalene, if you could get us that lunchtime so we could look at it. So we didn't just get it at the start of board meeting. Thank you.
no pressure, but we'll just,
No one.
we appreciate the hard work that you do. So next item under special items is RE 447 Draper Irrigation Company, expansion of scope. This is Salt Lake. Again, it is would be in Juliet's area, but Russell, will turn the time to you and let you explain.
This should be significantly less complicated than the last one, Mr. Chairman. Okay, in June of last year, the board committed funds to Draper Irrigation to install approximately 4,800 feet, 6-inch pipeline and 73 meter boxes. This was to replace a secondary line that was installed in a couple of subdivisions in backyards of some neighborhoods, and it was poorly installed by the original developer and was falling apart, had a lot of leaks. Okay, that project is coming in under budget by about $700,000. The irrigation company is requesting to use that money for a separate but similar project southeast of this current project. This work would be for about 2,300 feet of lawn and garden main lines and 20 meter boxes in Summersdown subdivision. And it's a similar situation. Main lines were placed in backyards and they're falling apart, they're poorly installed, and they would like to move them out to the streets and in the streets and parking strips. And the cost estimate for this is about $950,000, but anything over that $700,000, they will pay for out of their own funds. So that's about it. The staff would recommend the board allow the remaining funds to be used to replace the main lines and install meter boxes in the Summersdown subdivision.
So I just wanted to make a note for the board, just in case you don't remember. The reason this is coming back to you is it was decided a while ago that if a project came in under budget and they still had work to do, if it was more than $100,000, you wanted to be able to approve the use of those funds. So that's why Russell's here asking for your approval today.
So just to clarify that if a project comes in and there's less than $100,000, then the staff can go ahead and
Correct. Yeah.
make the decisions to move forward with that. If it's in excess of 100, then
Right.
it needs to come back for board action.
That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you for that clarification.
To give you a little bit of background on that, they got 10 bids on that last project, and it came in really under budget of what we thought it was going to be. And so we're not expecting that to happen in the future again. I can't remember the last time we got 10 bids on anything. So anyway, we're looking at this next phase to be closer to budget, being something like 950,000.
So 10 bids and they all came in under budget.
No, the difference between the low bid and the high bid was almost $1 million.
Oh,
So
okay.
the low bid was very low.
Okay. All right. Again, Juliet is not with us to be able to make that motion. Well, first of all, are there questions of Russell relative to the proposal? Okay, seeing none. Norm, would you be willing to make that motion? Okay. Okay, next two items.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. The next two items are withdrawal, and Tom Cox is the project manager on both of those. RD 828 Kane County Water Conservancy District and RE 225 Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. Tom, if you want to address both of those together or separately but together.
Well, normally the board in the board meeting just does one action on withdrawals, so you don't need to get into the details of those. But I can fill you in on those projects if you'd like. The one with the Keene County Water Conservancy District, they submitted an application in the 90s for a new dam in the area. They were looking at a specific spot just where the Highway 89 crosses Canal Creek. Water Resources staff went and looked in the area and identified several, we're trying to identify several different dam sites. We did, but the issue is the silt loading in Canal Creek would have just filled them up. So they didn't pursue any of the sites at that time. Subsequently, they constructed Jackson Flat Reservoir downstream of the town, and they pumped back into the system. So that's taking water that's already gone through their desilting pond and such, so it's cleaner water. They located another dam site upstream of Zion's National Park by the town of Orderville, called the Cove site, and they've been pursuing that. So that's why we've kept the application open all these many years. They've decided to work with the NRCS through their PL 566 program, which will pay for 65% or so of the project with grant. And they're teaming up with Washington County Water Conservancy District to help fund the project also. So they decided that they probably really didn't even need water resources funding. So we're asking for a withdrawal on that. And if after it'll take 2 or 3 years to work through the environmental impact process. And so once they're through with that and proceed with the project, if they do need to get water resources funding, they can submit a new updated application. So that's why we're asking for withdrawal on that project right now. On the other one, we kind of addressed that, is the Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. They came to us originally with a $90 million wish list of 7 projects. Over through the years, we've we've committed funds and funded some of those, but there was about a $7 million remaining that they weren't ready to use. And after discussions with them, they don't have intentions of, or they don't need our money to finish the last couple items. They're not ready to proceed with those now. So we've asked them about other funding needs, and they haven't indicated that they have other needs. So we're deciding just to start fresh, close this one out, and if they need funding for other things, they can submit a new application.
Okay, any questions? Any questions of Tom relative to those two withdrawal proposals? If not, we'll need someone to make a motion.
Kane County's in my area. I could take.
Sure.
care of if you'd like.
Okay. Jim, if you'll do that, thank you. Okay, thank you, Tom. Next item on the agenda, Shalane, update on secondary meter grant applications.
Yes, I will be providing you some information about what we've received and what tasks we have ahead before our next board meeting where we are planning to present this. I will say right now, since they managed to make it here for this meeting, because we received so many applications, we're kind of stealing a couple engineers from other parts of the office. And they weren't here when I announced staff, but Ani and Grant are both engineers in the planning section, and they're going to help us out with some of these applications because we received so many. And it's going to be a little bit of a process trying to get this information all together and reports prepared to present to you. So I did have a question for you to try to gauge your openness as we look at approximately 70 applications, so about 70 reports. We're looking at ways to make this efficient and move well, but we understand it's probably going to be a very long board meeting, possibly a 2-day, day and a half meeting. Are you all open to that? And if so, would you prefer Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday? We want to work with what works best for you, and we're just trying to figure out how we're going to do this.
What?
1.5 to 2 days straight, right? Right. No. Yeah, we'll give you breaks and we'll feed you. But yeah, it's definitely going to take more than a couple hours on a Thursday afternoon.
I prefer start dang early and quit late. Kill it in one day.
And we will do what we can. I'm just wanting to know if we have to, what are our options?
Shalane,
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem on Friday.
Okay.
So if we're going to have to use two,
You'd prefer Wednesday, Thursday.
right?
Okay.
But
You
I'd
too,
go
Blaine.
along with his early and late
Yeah.
if possible.
Yeah, I think we'll see what we can do as we actually start writing up these reports and put them together. Like I said, I'll give you a better update. You all got your emails yesterday about the applications in your area. I will say, Randy Crozier, we didn't get a single application from your area. So I don't know if you need to be advertising this, but
I don't believe in advertising anything.
okay. Well, then
Especially my phone number.
Right. Well, hey, that's on our website. It's out there for all to see. So I will give you some details when we get into our update during the board meeting. But yeah,
What's the date of our next meeting?
August 4th
Okay.
is the
I
date.
just wanted to make sure it wouldn't, because we always have Central Utah's meetings on Wednesday, and I
Oh.
just wanted to make sure we were going to run into a problem there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Jim, you indicated you would have a problem on a Friday. Is that an all-day problem?
All day Friday, I would. If it was a few hours Friday morning, I'd be all right.
Okay.
Have a commitment or in the afternoon.
And I do as well on Friday afternoon. Blaine, you indicated you had a problem.
Yeah, Fridays generally are good for me. I have other stuff.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we will see. Yeah, we're going to do our very best. And I will say part of the issue we've come across is of those approximately 70 applications, 40 something are also asking for board loan funds, not just grants. So yeah, we're hoping that maybe we can do the grants in sort of a table and provide staff's recommendation, and maybe you make a single motion on all of the grants. But when it comes to board loans, they're going to have to be considered one at a time. So,
Have all those applications exceeded the amount authorized by the state legislature?
no,
Okay.
they have not. We
Okay.
just opened a second application period yesterday. I'll give you the details about money and kind of where we think we are right now. But no, we've still got some funds available, so we are still accepting applications.
Shalane, do you want us to sign those applications today?
Yeah, actually, and an email approval is okay. I didn't necessarily want to print all 70 out if I don't have to. So an email approval will be enough for staff to get going on their investigations.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, I have a couple of questions, and you answered one of them, and that was I'm involved in another the Ag Task Force meeting, and the Department of Agriculture is likewise moving forward with $70 million worth of ARPA funded type
Right.
projects, but they were given approval to hire 5 additional staff people to help
Yes.
with that process.
So were we.
Okay, that was the question.
But
I asked.
our problem is kind of the timeline we set on ourselves. Trying to have these ready to present to you August 4th
Okay.
means the board folder has to be done July 28th, which means reports have to be done a week to 2 weeks before that, so they can go through our review process. So funding that kicks in July 1st.
So to hire people
Doesn't
and have
help
them
us.
on board, it doesn't fit within the
Right.
time frame and
That's
everything.
exactly
Well,
right.
Thank you to the additional staff that you've brought in and cannibalized, if you will, I guess.
That's
to
right.
help.
Borrow. We're just borrowing for a little bit.
To help with the process, because it is extremely timely from the standpoint of the parameters that have been placed on the use of the funds and having to be committed by a certain date and then fully installed, and all of the supply chain
Absolutely.
issues associated with all of that. Timing, is of the essence. And so we appreciate staff's extra efforts that will be put forward in helping to move this process forward to beat the legislative intent and the need that's out there. So that's everything aside from, drought issues we're facing
Right.
anyway. So thank you.
Thank you. Marisa.
Okay.
Marisa just asked, I'll let you know, yes, you aren't going to have to meet with all these applicants. Yeah. We won't require that this time, and we're probably not going to go do actual physical meetings with a lot of them either. It'll be verifying information that was provided, and just so we've got what we need to present to you accurate information.
Yeah, I thought we were going to have to open a satellite office in Logan.
I know, right?
Well, and I'll ask one other question in relationship to this. I've been involved in an email string that has taken place between staff here and others posed the question as to whether or not these funds could be pre-committed, because of the supply chain issue
Right.
and having to order. And I don't remember if there was ever a response issued relative to that.
Well, and I won't say pre-committed. Our goal is at this August meeting to have actual committal of the grant funds. Because it's a grant, there aren't the requirements that are necessary for, when you actually take title to a project. Or go through a whole bonding process. So the grants are a much simpler process and there aren't a load of requirements that the applicant has to meet. So our intention is that August 4th meeting, funds will be committed for grants. That's not the case on the board funds unless someone's really been working on their requirements and really thinks they'll be ready to get their board loan funds committed. Our goal at that point is to have them authorized and then commit probably at the September meeting. So there will be funds available. It won't be all of them.
Not necessarily be the loan funds, but the grant
Right.
funds will be available and they'll be
Yes.
able to proceed with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Again, this is just a heavy lift on the part of division staff and I for one recognize it. I think Maurice's already alluded to the fact that there's 22 of those 70, I think, are in the Davis, Weber, Morgan, Summit County areas. And so they're trying to do some things to meet the legislative intent. That's there. So, well, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, just a brief update on Flip Blitz. Shelby Erickson.
Yes, she'll be here at that time. She's not here now, but she'll provide you an update on the Flip Blitz that just happened last month.
Okay. And then Eric Dixon will give an update on the Lake Powell pipeline.
Correct.
Report.
Provided he can make it back. He actually drove out to the Great Salt Lake Causeway. He's working on another project. And so he was driving out there this morning and he let us know that if he can't make it back, we do have someone capable, Deputy Director Joel Williams, of updating you all on the Lake Powell pipeline. So we expect Eric, but if he doesn't make it, Joel will cover.
Okay. Candace, we'll turn the time to you then on director's report.
Great,
What-
thank you
share with
very much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I will, go over the Great Salt Lake berm modifications, that project that Eric's going out to check out and kind of the purpose and the need behind that. Also talk a little bit about interim week that has been this week. Joel presented at the Natural Resources, Ag and Environment and Appropriations Subcommittee meeting on Tuesday. And then I presented this morning at the Legislative Water Development Commission meeting on water conservation. Talk a little bit about the first Growing Water Smart workshop that'll be in November. And then give some updates on some things that are happening on the Colorado River as well. So that's generally what I'll cover.
Okay. Any questions of Candace?
If I might just make one comment, with the advertised phone number, I got a call from a guy from Eugene, Oregon yesterday on the Great Salt Lake, which was an interesting discussion, but I was in the middle of trying to repair a canal that was breaking, and I thought, boy, this was good timing. But anyway, it's just interesting to see, I guess, the comments that came from someone from that area that was just passing through was pretty upset with the level of the water in the Great Salt Lake and wanted to know what I was going to do to address that problem. And I told him if I knew the answer to that, I would not do what I do today. And left it at that.
Well, I guess speaking for the other board members, we're glad that you got that phone call and not the rest of us that may have phone numbers that are readily available. Okay, anything else we need to bring up in the briefing meeting this morning?
We probably do on the next item for information to the board. Shalene is prepared with the status of funds. If we can move to that.
Excuse me, Candace, I was looking at the wrong agenda. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might bring something up, I think maybe it applies at this point. As most of you are aware, that House Bill 168, the state engineer has put a committee together to work through that, to make recommendations to the legislature next year. And I was invited to participate in that. But to my knowledge, from the people that are invited there, there was nobody involved with water resources there. And I guess that to some extent, I have the concern that it would be nice if you had a little representation from water resources, because if something happens that does change priority, that could have an impact on the water rights that we hold as far as the board goes and whatnot. Anyway, I'm there representing myself as an individual. I'm not there representing water resources or anyone else, but I just wondered if that's something that may ought to be addressed. I just haven't seen that representation, Candace, and I just had that concern as I look at the indebtedness that we have and the water rights that we take for that indebtedness.
That's a great question, Randy, and thanks so much for bringing it up. I know that that group was held really tight by the state engineer, and I would be happy to follow up with her on the potential of adding someone from water resources, because I think it is a great point.
Well, and don't take me wrong, there's a great group of people that's participating there, and I think I hope that we come up with something that's workable, but I mean, I just feel like water resources ought to be possibly represented there, Candace. But not that I'm trying to tell you what to do, but it might be good to have that discussion.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay, Randy, thanks for that information. So Candace, we'll go back to you for information to the board.
And Candace, if you don't mind, I'll just take over. She mentioned we'll jump into the status of funds. So I'm changing my message for you a little bit today. And I'm, as I kind of alluded to before, we're going to stop telling you to go out and try to find big projects, because I think we've brought some to you. And now we're starting to look at, maybe we're going to run out of money. I think one of the things we've discussed is that, fortunately, even though a lot of these look like, oh, great, we're almost out, we are at the end of a fiscal year. We are going to have new money showing up next month, which is good. But we've discussed these funds that will be coming back to us from our recapitalization, paying off when the board recapitalized their debt, and that we'll be done paying that. So we will have an influx of money. However, as you may see, as we've gone through these projects today, $65 million for Provo River water users, 21 possibly for Uintah Water Conservancy District. Down there on that list, authorized is $36 million for Provo City, over 18 for Draper Irrigation Company. And as I mentioned, almost $60 million in requests for secondary meter loans to help fund their secondary meter projects. So We're going to be a little more fiscally responsible now. And we don't need you to go out and find big canals that need to be piped. I think we're okay. I'm not saying that we can't fund the projects that are before you, but I do think it's time that we need to look at them wisely. And I'm glad we're getting some of these, like Weber Basin, withdrawn if they're not going to actually use the funds. We have some more that we've noticed on the list that hopefully will be withdrawing next time too, so we can start to clean things up. And so we are still doing okay. I would like to ask, there's been some guidelines set up, we've used that word a lot today, about funding secondary meter loans in the past with C&D funds. We're wondering if you'd be open to some of them. Some of the applicants are small cities, maybe $1 million or so they need to complete their secondary meter projects. Would you be okay funding those out of the city water loans fund rather than everything coming from the C&D? That is one that doesn't grow like the C&D fund does, but it does have some money available for the smaller projects. So if you'd be open to that, we may move some of those there rather than try to fund everything from the C&D fund.
I would certainly be comfortable with that personally.
Okay, I'm seeing head nods. Norm?
I would also,
Okay,
as long as they are cities.
yes.
Yeah, as long as it falls within the guidelines and meets the parameters, I think, certainly staff has the discretion to use the flexibility and make recommendations as to whatever
Perfect.
works best to utilize.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do.
Utilize the funds available, so.
Perfect. So unless there are questions, I did hand you all out a piece of paper since we had updated the Uintah report, but didn't update the status of funds with and now I'm going to tell you, it's the number that staff recommended at the 85-15 split. So it doesn't have the 90-10 split that may be requested, but those are the numbers we're looking at right now. If everything were funded tomorrow, we'd be really in the hole, but of course that's not happening. So we're okay. Questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candace, back to you.
Thank you. So the next item that just wanted to make sure that you were aware of, and I believe you all are, but on the staffing change, we had since Shalane became our assistant director over the development branch, we opened the project funding section manager, and we had a number of really great applicants. At the end of the day, Marissa Egbert was offered the job and she accepted it. So we are grateful for her and excited to have her in her new position. And then in addition, I thought maybe a tour update. I don't know, Shalane, if you can give that or if you want to ask Ben to give an update on the tour.
I spoke with Ben and there's not a lot to update. Ben and Tom have compiled a list of sites, actually plan to go see if they can figure out a route, what will work in the course of the day. There has been some discussion, Candace, because we're talking about the luncheon is going to be our 75th anniversary celebration in conjunction with the tour. And so part of the discussion is it appropriate maybe to have the tour go a little longer than usual, and rather than have a break in the middle of the day and do lunch and try to be set to a certain time, maybe we just extend the tour to 1:30 and then it's party time. I'm not sure if that works, but if we're planning to invite former board members, others to this lunch to celebrate the board's 75th anniversary, maybe it would be better to not try to cram a lunch party into an hour in the middle of a tour. So what are the board members thinking on that? Candace, thoughts?
Yeah, I'd
seeing
love to
head
hear
nod.
the board members' thoughts. I think it would definitely need to be longer than an hour for the
Right.
luncheon.
And so we're just thinking that maybe, if we just did a longer morning tour, go into early afternoon, have a later lunch, and then party. Kyle?
That would be my recommendation,
Okay.
so that you can give give the 75th anniversary celebration due process, if you will, for
Right.
lack of a better word, so that it has the time that you need to accomplish what you need to. And if we, just take a little bit longer in the morning, midday.
We'll provide you snacks so no one's famished come lunchtime.
Snacks and restrooms are all that's
Okay.
needed. So
Perfect.
Would it be possible for me to see some of the?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I have some ideas too
Yes.
that we might be able to incorporate. So I just
Yes.
curious to know what.
Ben mentioned this morning, he said, Tom and I were going to go look at some things and see if there are things we can really get to and talk to Wayne about what your ideas are and what you'd definitely like to see. If there's something
some-
you really wouldn't.
Well, there's some really neat water
Sure.
projects going on in my area. So
Absolutely.
anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Just remember, they don't prefer elevators.
Hey, anything I'd go to doesn't have an elevator in it.
Well, haven't you been in that little elevator that drops into the tunnel up at the head of Strawberry, that little cage that it's a two-person unit?
Yeah, but we're not going there.
Well, I just figured we'd throw that out up front because there's a few board members probably will not show if we don't.
What are the feelings of the other board members relative to tour date and celebration?
Speaking from the old people, that sounds fine to me.
We all gave our nod to.
Okay, all right. Okay, back to you, Candace.
And that was all I had for you. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other items that we need to bring up on the agenda at this point? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn and reconvene at 1:30. Is that correct? Okay, so moved. All right. Doesn't require a second, non-debatable. We'll be back here at 1:30. Thank you.